Hey guys, so today we're going to be building a version of Pong. We can see we've got pre-built here, but before we go into any of the Scratch code, let's start out by doing a quick demo of what we're going to be making. So full screen this. So to give a quick sense of the sprites we're going to be making, we've got a paddle over here that we're going to make ourselves. We've got a ball sprite, and then the last one is kind of subtle here, but in the background we have a wall that basically is going to check anytime the ball touches that. Our score is going to reset to 0, and we're going to show a game over screen. We also have a variable up here that's score. This is just going to be tracking every time that the ball touches the paddle. We're going to add 1 to the score. So before we go ahead and build this, let's do a quick demo. So, okay, pretty poor first game, but you can see game over screen, scores back to 0. Let's try again. Cool. So you can see I'm controlling with the arrow keys. You can that's bouncing off the walls, will bounce off the paddle, and then if you miss it, then score sets back to 0 and you get the game over. Cool, so that is what we're going to be building today. So first things first, open up a new Scratch project. So go scratch.mit.edu, and then when you're there, we're going to go to create, and we're going to start with a brand new Scratch file. Cool. So first thing we can do is go ahead and delete the cat sprite here, and we're going to start to put in the sprites that we actually want for our game. So which were the ones we want? So first let's add the ball. So the way we're going to do that, that's actually already built for us in Scratch. So we're going to choose a sprite, and we're going to pick the ball here. We can move it around, we can change the size. If you want it to be slightly smaller, put it around 80. We can have it around 120 for this game. Cool. The next thing we're going to need is the paddle. So choose a sprite. We're actually going to make our own for this. So go to paint. And here's where we're going to design the paddle. So it's going to be very simple. We just do a rectangle. Let's up the outline to about 20 to make it a bit more noticeable. The fill, we can kind of make whatever you want, so set the color in here. And then when you're done with that, go ahead and, so that's the fill and the outline are different here. So let's take out the fill and make this slightly, you know, we can leave it with a little bit of a gap for now. If you want to change the outline color, you can definitely do that as well. So set it something like that. And then we can set it in the screen. So whatever you want the Y coordinate to be, so about -150 here. And then the X is going to change as we kind of press the right and left arrow keys. Cool, so the last thing we're going to need is the wall. Actually, before we make that, let's rename this sprite. So we're going to call this paddle. We've got ball, we've got paddle, and now let's make one more sprite. And this one's going to be even simpler. So we're going to just drag a long line here, and we're going to put that below the sprite. Maybe change the color, so let's make it just black for now, and that's going to be our kind of barrier wall. So let's change the name from sprite1 to wall. Cool, so now we've made our 3 sprites. Let's start to write some of the code here. So let's start with the code for the paddle. So go ahead and click on the paddle, and the first thing we need to do is kind of have it change X coordinates, so shift left and right, when we click the arrow keys. So the way we're going to do that is first we're going to add one of the when flag clicked, so when the game starts. We're going to want to do this all the time, so not just a one-off. We're going to want to put this in a forever loop, so forever. We're going to want to check which arrow has been typed, so we're going to do an if statement, and we're going to want 2 of them because we're going to have one for the left arrow, one for the right arrow. Now let's go to the sensors, to put in the checks. So we're going to have one check if the, sorry, not if touching, if key is pressed. So we're going to check if the right arrow is pressed. We're going to move right. And if the left arrow is pressed, we're going to move left. And the way we're going to set this up is we're going to have move 10 steps is going to be the same as moving right. So to test that, if you're all caught up with me here following along, click the flag. You see this gets lit up, hit the right arrow, and it should move right, but the left is not yet going to work and move left. So what we need to do is drag in the move 10 steps here, but we're actually going to change it to -10. So it's going to move 10 steps in the opposite direction. So now try again, and you can see that you can move it back and forth, and the X coordinate is changing as we move the paddle. Cool. So the first part of this is now complete. We've got the paddle working. So next we're going to do is animate the ball. So before we have any interacting with the ball and the paddle or the ball and the wall, let's just try and get this to kind of move around the court. So let's go to the ball. Again, let's get one of the one flag clicked. We're going to want the ball to always be moving, so we're going to have a forever loop. And you know what, initially, let's have it start at 0, 0, so you can see what that looks like is basically where it is. So we have the ball start in the middle by having it go to 0, 0. So you can see if I move it out here and I click, it's going to go back to the middle. So that's what that line does. And then forever, we're going to have it basically move 10 steps. So you can see initially, it's just going to keep moving 10 steps, but it's going to do it to the right. So we don't always want it to be facing that direction. So let's have it kind of point in a random direction before it goes. So let's go point in direction. Now 90 is actually going to be the same thing. If I change it to say 180, it's going to go down now instead. But you know what, if I want it to be random, let's go to operator. And instead of 180, I can say pick random between 0 and 360. And now you can see each time it's going to go out in a different direction. Cool. Now the next thing we need to do is obviously we don't want it to just go through the wall each time, we want it to actually bounce. So if we go to our, we want to do in motion, I believe, here. If on edge, bounce. And now you can see that every time it hits one of the edges, it checks that, and it's going to bounce as it should. We have control over the paddle, we have control over the ball, but what you'll notice is that it's not actually detecting the paddle yet. So that's something we're going to have to manually add in. So let's go ahead and do that now. So let's pause this. Okay. So this is going to be an interaction between the ball and the paddle, so we can actually do it in either code here. Let's do it in the ball for now. So let's add another if flag clicked, or when flag clicked. We're going to put another forever loop because we want this to always be running this check. And we want to say if the ball is touching the paddle, then we're going to want it to bounce off in some direction. So let's go if touching, so we're in the ball code, so if the ball is touching the paddle, then it's already going to be moving because of this, so we just really need it to change direction. So let's go to, all we need to do is have it point in a new direction, or even just turn a certain amount of degrees. So we don't necessarily want it to be the same amount of degrees every time. So let's also put in a random operator here, and let's do it between say 90 and 120, and let's see what that looks like. So maybe not quite, well, not bad. Okay, I'm happy with that for now. So again, you can always go in and change that, but for now we'll keep that as the range. Makes it a little bit tricky. Cool. So the next thing we're going to do is let's add the score. So the score, I mentioned briefly, is going to be a variable. So go to the variables tab. We're going to make a new variable. Let's name it score. It's going to be for all of the sprites because we're going to want to track this no matter where we are in the program, not just any one specific sprite. So go OK, and you can see it pops up in the top here. So when do we want to add one to the score? Well, we actually just set up something for that case, right? So we said if the ball is touching the paddle, then we want it to kind of turn so it bounces in a different direction. We're also going to want to go ahead and add one to the score. So in this variable section, we also have change by 1. So that's going to basically add 1 to it. So we're going to go change score by 1. Now every time the ball is touching the paddle, we're not only going to move it, but we're also going to update the score by 1. So let's see if that works. Cool. Looks like we got 3 points because it's kind of touching it multiple times, but it's doing what we want it to do. Great. So what should we do next? All right, next thing we want to do is if the ball touches the wall instead of the paddle, we actually want to reset the score back to 0. So let's go to the wall now. We've got no code. We're going to also add a when flagged clicked button. We're going to add another forever loop because we always want to be running this check. We want to add another if statement, and we're going to say if the wall is touching the paddle, so we're going to say touching, not paddle, sorry, the ball. If the wall is touching the ball, then we're going to go and set the variable, which is going to be the score, to 0. So let's see how that goes. You can see it's already done it. So if we're playing and it goes to 0 every time it touches that. Cool. So now let's just add a quick backdrop in there. So we're getting a lot of the functionality done now. So you can pick whatever you want. Let's do maybe the galaxy background. Cool, so it makes the wall a bit more discreet. So it won't change any of the functionality, just changes the look a little bit. And now let's add some sounds to the game. So let's have one sound when it touches the paddle, and that can be kind of a positive sound, and then when it touches the wall and you lose your points, we can have that be more of a negative sound. So let's go to sounds. So the kind of defaults it has are pop and boing, so maybe let's just use those for now. So you can click it to hear what that sounds like. So that'll be what happens when we get a point. So in here we've got if the ball is touching the paddle, you're going to update the score by 1, and that's also play sound pop until done. So let's just do a check that works. You can see that worked. And now let's finally add a different noise. If the wall touches the ball, you set the score to 0, and let's maybe get a new sound. So we can go to sounds, choose a sound. You can pick from any of them here. So let's see. Alright, that works. So let's pick this guy. And let's say if you set the score to 0, so when you've lost, we're going to play this bonk sound. So you can see this works, and then if you let it go, you're back at 0. Cool. So that's as far as we're going to get for this tutorial. Any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And yeah, enjoy playing your new game of Pong.